Buenas tardes. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope that each and every one of you participate in the day of action to safely reopen schools organized by AFT and allies as the future, children as the future of our country. So it's an important issue. Thank you for that. This town hall is the last one of a series of town halls put together by the AFL-CIO constituency groups who have worked hard to shed light on a series of issues that our communities face today. All of us town halls have amplified the voices of Black, Brown, LGBTQ, women, Native American, Asian, and Pacific Islanders. I want to congratulate you, constituency group, for a well done job. We use this platform as labor leaders to demand accountability from the government officials. And yes, even amidst pandemic, we had taken to the streets because that is where the best fight for social, economic, racial, gender, and workers' rights begin. I'd like to take this moment, and I ask you to join me, to acknowledge and pay tribute to all those workers who have passed as a result of this deadly virus. Thank you. On our first All of Us town halls, LACLA presented a report written in partnership with Mi Gente that focused on the impact of COVID-19 on the Latinx community. Today, LACLA presents you with our most recent work, Puerto Rico, from economic and natural disaster to COVID-19 and the importance of union solidarity. A publication that seeks to further draw attention to the topic of neglected communities, systemic racism in the United States, with Puerto Rico on its focus. It's important for us on the mainland to learn about what's happening in Puerto Rico. It is true that the entire world is living through horrible health emergency, but not everyone is going through it while still attempting to recover from a rampant economic instability and a series of unforgiving natural disasters. Our working sisters and brothers on the island are hurting. They are suffering. And as we will hear today, they are scared. Today, we are here to continue to elevate the voice of the island and to stand in solidarity with her people. Before I go, I want to recognize and say a few words recognizing the incredible work that the officers of the AFL-CIO have done or are doing to respond to this unprecedented crisis. The dedication and commitment to union and non-union workers, no matter who we are or where we came from, to our communities and to this country, it is inspiring. See, true leaders are defined not by how they perform in the best of times, but rather by how they lead, respond, and react in the most trying and turbulent times. And the person that I'm going to introduce next is not strange to this. He had played a vital role in demanding that workers across the nation have access to adequate worker protections, healthcare, and he had vehemently spoke against systemic racism plaguing our agencies, institutions, and nation. That person is President Tronca. Thank you for being here with us.
Rich, you are on mute.
You're on, President Trump, though. No.
There we go.
Yes, you're on. Yes, you're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. I thought I lost my voice for a second. Let me say good evening, everyone. And before I begin, let me thank Sister Yanira Moreno for her leadership and for all that she does for working people. And let me thank everyone at the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. Tonight's town hall would not have been possible without all of you. And most importantly, I want to thank everyone at home for tuning in. You see, in 6 short months, we've all seen the devastating impact a pandemic can have on our local unions, on our affiliates, on our entire nation. In Puerto Rico, 6 months of a pandemic comes on the heels of 6 years of economic turmoil and multiple national disasters. Puerto Rico can still feel the pain of an economic collapse in 2014, still see the devastation left behind by Hurricanes Maria and Irma in 2017, and the decimation caused by a series of earthquakes that have shaken the island since 2019, and the health, social, and financial crisis that COVID-19 has unleashed upon working families across Puerto Rico has only made matters worse. Over 3,000 Puerto Ricans have COVID-19. Over 400 Puerto Ricans have died. And where's the sense of urgency? Where's the leadership? It's sure not coming from this White House. Many of you know I'm a student of history, but you don't have to be a student of history to know that Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. And the 3.4 million U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico deserve federal government responses to natural disasters and a pandemic that matches the urgency of the situation. But this president has failed. He's failed to comprehend that he is the president of every U.S. citizen, not just a president for his voters. He's failed to get the coronavirus under control. If Trump and his team think the virus will go away simply by keeping it out of sight, well, then they're truly out of their minds. And if they continue to pretend that the pandemic and economic freefall are separate challenges, then recovery will be impossible. And he has failed Puerto Rico. In moments of crisis, we look to the president. We try to find comfort and compassion. After hurricanes, in the wake of earthquakes, throughout the pandemic, what has Donald Trump given us? Incompetence and callousness and cruelty. And what has he done for Puerto Rico? He's botched the federal response to natural disasters. He attacked the mayor of San Juan for doing her job while he refused to do his. And in July, we learned this president reportedly floated the idea of selling Puerto Rico in 2017 after the island was devastated by Hurricane Maria. Brothers, sisters, friends, this president won't meet this moment, but the labor movement will always rise to strengthen our solidarity, to fight for real relief, to win a better day. Puerto Ricans have been knocked down, but Puerto Ricans always get back up. The Puerto Rico Federation of Labor, under Brother Lole Rodriguez Viez, is mobilizing and stepping up as our elected leaders are stepping back. On June 17th, the labor movement planted our flag in the ground with the Workers' First Caravan for racial and economic justice. There were 608 events in all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. And since then, we're going to the mat for the HEROES Act to prioritize worker safety and public services, to protect pensions and paychecks, to invest in infrastructure and public schools, to guarantee health care and vital public services. Puerto Rico would receive $10.9 billion in direct aid if the Senate passed the HEROES Act. Nearly $1 billion for Puerto Rico schools as our children and educators start a new school year, and much, much more. Puerto Ricans know the pain and the suffering of inaction. Now's the time to demand relief. Now is the time to expect more as we do more to care for our communities and rebuild what is broken. Now is the time for union leadership, and nothing is more powerful than a united labor movement. God bless you, stay safe, and please enjoy the rest of the town hall. Yanira, back to you.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, President Trunca, for those kind words. And once again, thank you very much for your leadership. Now let me introduce to you another outstanding leader whose support in the fight for equality and justice has been paramount, and whose background he has never forgot. He is LACLA's brother and friend, AFL-CIO Executive Vice President, Tafari Gebre. Vice President.
Thank you, Yanira. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for your love, and thank you, LACLA, for thinking of me and having me in this town hall. I must tell everybody out there that this is, as Yanira said, this is the last of the 6 town halls that we have done. We did not know what we're gonna do without getting together as brothers and sisters at union halls and on the streets. And we experimented, and with the hard work and the dedication of the constituency groups and the AFL-CIO staff, we have pulled off all 6 of them. And congratulations to all of you. And LACLA is definitely not, maybe the last one to do it, but not the least important one to do this. So, brothers and sisters, we gather today on the heels of Labor Day, a day that we're dedicated to honoring workers and the work they do. But we also gather today in the middle of a pandemic. As you all know, this pandemic has been ravaging people of color at higher rate. And especially migrant workers have been hit doubly hard. You see, immigrant workers are often doing work in industries deemed essential, meaning their work is forced to risk their lives to keep our economy moving. These are immigrant workers who provide food deliveries, who farm our land, who work in grocery stores, and have been risking their lives every day so that all of us can eat and so all of us can be safe. So we must ask how absolutely atrocious that is when our government provided aid for workers, purposefully left immigrant workers out. Brothers and sisters, this should be absolutely unacceptable in a country of ours. Immigrant workers deserve benefits, including cash payments, unemployment insurance, nutrition assistance, so all of us can be safe. This town hall format is called All of Us. But I must say, there is not all of us without immigrant workers. Because if it is not all of us, it would be none of us. The good thing is America's unions are united in fighting for our 5 economic essentials during this pandemic. We know that we can't keep our country healthy, safe, and competitive without enacting policies that protect all workers, regardless of their immigration status. Excluding millions of immigrant families from vital coverage and benefits is absolutely wrong, and it should be corrected. And you must ask, how do we correct it? The House already passed the HEROES Act. It's time for the Senate to follow through, because the HEROES Act contains provisions that help us ensure that no one is left behind. So today and every day, we must say, when someone is left out, all of us are in danger. When someone is unsafe, all of us are unsafe. When immigrant workers are unsafe, all workers are unsafe. Brothers and sisters, I also want to congratulate you. In the midst of all this stuff going on in our country, LACLA had the fortitude to think and microscopically focus on a chronic issue of Puerto Rico. People who are Americans like you and I, but neglected by their government every day. So I'll leave you with this. There is a cure for all of this, and that's building power for workers. And in order to build power for workers, we must organize, we must galvanize, and we must mobilize and mobilize and mobilize. So if you're like me and you're sick and tired of kids in cages, infants in cages, in this November, come out and vote. If you're sick and tired of the racism and the xenophobia in this country, come out and vote. If you're sick and tired of Donald Trump like I am, there is no other panacea. Come out and vote. Let's show the power of immigrants. Let's show the power of our community by together showing up and voting the cancer out of the White House. Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to you, Yanir.
Thank you, sir. Vice President Guerrero, thank you very much for being here with us, but for leadership, the leadership that you do, but mainly because of the love that you have for workers and working family. You show that with your work day in and day out. Thank you. So now let me introduce you, Evelyn de Jesus, American Federation of Teachers, Executive Vice President. Let me say a little bit more about my sister. Evelyn is also the first Latina to be officially elected AFT's Executive Vice President in over 100 years. That's the kind of leadership that we have, and that's the one actually that we need. I say this because it's important to acknowledge and highlight the advancements and equality that the labor movement brings to the fight. And these are the challenges that we have. So thank you, Evelyn, for your leadership. Along with Evelyn, and doesn't need more introduction, is our brother, Jose Lole Rodriguez Baez, Machinist Union Business Representative and President of the Puerto Rico Federation of Labor. Iran Ramirez, LACLA collaborator and co-author of this report. With them, we're going to receive the information that is in this report. Very important. I want to say thank you for joining us, for your time, and for your commitment to shed the light of what's happening in Puerto Rico. Now, compañeros y compañeras, I will leave you in the hands of retired ASME Area Regional Director, a man who has dedicated his life to the labor movement, a Puerto Rican worker, a key LACLA member, a team player, my dear, dear friend for many years, your host, Edgar de Jesus. Edgar.
First, gracias, mi compañera Yanira. And thank you all for joining us today as we dedicate this space, shedding much needed light on the current situation that millions of Puerto Ricans are facing. The importance of this discussion is not only relevant and urgent, but is also long overdue. The fact that for too long, the people of Puerto Rico have been facing struggles on different fronts. Economic crisis that has impacted the lives of Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican working families, to a series of natural events from which the island was not prepared and has yet to recover from. So today, we're meeting here, we're holding this virtual town hall because the entire world faces a common threat with COVID-19. And while our lives have undoubtedly been turned upside down by this pandemic, the implication of the same virus in Puerto Rico, just over 1,000 miles away from the US shores, has been aggravated by the factors that I have already mentioned, and which we're going to expand upon. In order to draw attention to the multiple issues that the Puerto Rican people currently face, our LACLA National Board has been working on a report. Yanira mentions it. Puerto Rico from economic and natural disasters to the COVID-19 and the importance of union solidarity. I believe this report is being unraveled as we speak. This timely and telling document explains how the island got to where it was today, where it is today, the debt crisis with a dwindling and an aging population, which has had little access to proper health care. The report explains how these factors have played a detrimental impact in the island's ability to navigate the challenges posed by COVID-19. Today, we're going to be joined by my sister, although we're not siblings, la compañera Evelyn de Jesus from the American Federation of Teachers. Lole, he's a brother. I work with Lole in Puerto Rico with AFSCME since 1999 until 2014 when I finally left the island. And with Iran Ramirez, who I also know from Puerto Rico in the labor battles of Puerto Rico when he was on the OPIU, and he's helping us with this report. We're also going to hear from two Puerto Rican workers. They will tell us what the numbers and the statistics cannot tell us. They will share with us some of the struggles, the fears, and hopelessness that they feel. Nonetheless, we are talking about my fellow Boricuas, and I have to say that we are a people of sonrisa y alegría, smiles and happiness. And even when facing the darkest of forecasts, we know we will pull through because we are strong, because we are resilient, because we are courageous, and ultimately because there's no other choice. So we will also hear about how the dedication of these individuals is as strong and as mighty as the toughest strong. In El Barrio, in my younger days, we used to say, siempre pa'lante. In order for our audience to fully understand what is happening in Puerto Rico and why, let me turn first to Iran. Iran, I'm going to try to phrase this question in a simple way, but I know that the response is complicated, it's complex. So as I have mentioned, we have a report, Puerto Rico from economic and natural disasters to the COVID-19 and the importance of union solidarity. And we understand that this report is aimed at underscoring the current situation that the island faces economically, politically, in healthcare, and in other critical issues. Can you tell us what is the situation and how did our island get to this point? Compañero.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Thank you for this opportunity. Like Erga is saying, the situation in Puerto Rico is known by everybody in the States. But when you talk about Puerto Rico, most of the people just think about the hurricane and the bankruptcy and the huge 72 billion debt that we have. But that are actually the effects of some actions that were taken years ago. Puerto Rico has been turned from a beautiful Caribbean paradise into a living hell by Wall Street and hedge funds and corporations. Puerto Rico is a case example of what happens when workers are left out of the political and economic conversation and the reins are taken by corporations. Hedge funds and Wall Street and now La Junta are why we are in this situation. But what happened years ago is what we try to explain in the report. If we want to to understand Puerto Rico, we have to understand Puerto Rico going back at least 20 years or even more in the 70s. The economy of the island has been set by the policy of Congress. Back in the 70s, they approved what is used to be called like Section 936. Section 936 allowed corporations to be established in the island and not pay any taxes on that money. For that, they needed to leave that money in Puerto Rican banks and give jobs to the people. But they were no paying any taxes at all. So what happened with that is, as you can imagine, Puerto Rico grew as a huge economic powerhouse, especially in pharmaceuticals. And what happened is, who was left to pay for all the infrastructure needed? It was the government of the island. So it was the government of the island who needed to go ahead, indebt themselves to build roads, bridges, airports, maintain electrical infrastructure. So in '96, all of a sudden, the Congress started having a conversation that was too costly. So what happened is that they decided to fade out Section 936. Already Puerto Rico has taken a hit because of NAFTA, and everybody knows the story of NAFTA in the States. So 10 years later, 2006, Section 936 faded out. So all of a sudden, all those corporations that were in the island decided to, okay, I'm leaving because I don't have any tax incentives. So they usually, what they do, they move to a cheaper place so they can have a cheaper cost of labor. So all of a sudden, Puerto Rico lost hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs. You will see in the report, and the numbers are there, that Puerto Rico has lost close to 200,000 manufacturing jobs because of that. And if you put on top of that the direct, indirect jobs, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs. So all of a sudden, the whole economy of the island collapsed. No longer Congress was doing anything for the island in terms of creating a new model that they just have disrupted, but they were not even allowing the island to create a new model. So now in 2006, what happened? Austerity kicks in. But austerity on asteroids. It was like all of a sudden, it was either more taxes, more the cost of the services was a lot more expensive, and we moved a couple of years, nothing was working. So in 2009, they decided, oh, we need to lay off thousands of public sector workers. So all of a sudden, we got 30,000 public sector employees, brothers and sisters from the unions we represent, being laid off. They did not care. In most of the cases, you have husband and wife, all of a sudden without a job. You got centers, the economic center of the island, the town halls, closing down a lot of offices. So of course, what happens? Cafeterias, lunch places around us start closing down. So everything was set up for an economic nightmare. So now we got 2007 with Maria and Irma, the two hurricanes. And we know the story about that. Everybody know what's happening in the island. We know the lack, like President Trump said, the lack of response and care that the Trump administration had with the island. And it was a nightmare. A couple of years later, we got a corrupt government. The people got fed up with that, and we kicked that Governor Ricardo Rosselló out of office. Then, a year later, we got the earthquakes. Still, we're trying to recover from the earthquakes, and now we got COVID-19. So when you see the whole scenario of what is going on in the island, you can imagine how difficult it will be for the island in comparison to any other territory within the United States to recover from the pandemic. The estimates right now is that we have lost around 80,000 jobs just in the last 6 months. And there are jobs that are not going to recover. We hear news every single day of more factories closing, more businesses shutting down, and the response from the local and from the state government is not there. It's completely ineffective. So for us, and you will see it on the report, we show what actually happened before the bankruptcy, before the hurricanes, and before COVID and the earthquakes. And we will see a federal government that did not respond to the crisis in the island at hand. Even though we owe $72 billion, the actual cost on the market of that debt is less than half. At one point, the treasurer of the United States could have bought that debt and have the Puerto Rico government repay it for a quarter of what is owed. But no, they decided to leave that in the hands of the trust of the vultures and hedge funds and Wall Street. So that's how we ended up in that situation.
Bueno, Irán, gracias, muchas gracias. Cuando llueve sobre mojado in Spanish, when it rains, it pours. The reality is that in Puerto Rico, it's never stopped raining. The rain fund does not have enough funds to help the people. The situation continues to affect so many kids in whose education has been interrupted. Since 2017, with the hurricanes Irma and Maria, and then again at the end of last year, 2019, and the beginning of 2020, numerous earthquakes that have been coming in and affecting Puerto Rico, and now the COVID-19. I want to hear from our sister, Evelyn De Jesus from the American Federation of Teachers. Evelyn, as an educator, a fellow sister, you're an advocate, you've been a union leader. Can you tell us a little bit about the present situation that your members and our people are confronting in Puerto Rico, and what you think needs to happen in the island in order for this to move forward?
So good morning, good afternoon, Edgar, and thank you so much for that. As you know, I am the Executive Vice President of AFT, and also I'm a Vice President of LACLA. I'm on the board of LACLA, and I'm a New Yorican, and my mother and my father are from Puerto Rico, and I grew up on the summers of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is very dear to us. There's a lot going on in Puerto Rico with the schools and what is happening. But the good news is that we've done a lot of stuff. As you know, the hurricanes have come, the earthquakes have come, but the Asociación de Maestros in Puerto Rico have really come through. AFL-CIO, LACLA, and all of the unions have come together. So the teachers in Puerto Rico, during our trips in Puerto Rico, we've joined with AMPR folks distributing supplies, like you guys, like toiletries, and we've distributed thousands of books, first books, so kids will have something to read. And the social emotional issue on that is we try to get books that, Missy, I miss you. I'm so happy to see you. I want to go back to school. Books that would help them identify and value what they're going through. The walk towards us was very incredible. Some of them were still living in the camps, as you know, in tents that AFT, AMPR, our brothers and sisters in AFL-CIO have participated. Some of them didn't have schools to go back to, but they knew that they can depend on their teachers, and AMPR was there every step of the way. The AFL-CIO recruited union members, volunteers to go to Puerto Rico and do real work. That collaboration got truckers moving all the supplies that we needed to move, everything that needed to go into the really effective areas. I have to give a shout out to the Seafarers Union. They helped us transport all of the tents, all of the books. Nurses and other healthcare professionals got on planes to do what they do best, take care of the people, make sure that people that were diabetic got the insulin they needed, people had amputations, and just people that were depressed, that they knew as they saw nurses and doctors, that they knew that they were going to be okay. The AFT delivered, as I said, hundreds of tents and water filters. When the pandemic hit and the federal government did almost nothing, as Mr. Trump said, the AFT bought many thousands of PPEs and delivered 4,000 to Puerto Rico. Together, the AFT and the AFCIO came to Puerto Rico to support the teachers, AMPR, and show the deepest truth of the union movement. That together, we can accomplish what we could never achieve on our own. Que juntos podemos hacer mucho más de que nunca haremos por hacer solos. We know that we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. Puerto Ricans, as you said, Edgar, they have a sonrisa, they have a smile, but they are like, I always compare them to a palm tree. A palm tree is deeply rooted, but always weathers the storm, and they stand. No matter what happens, they lift up and they continue. So we at the UFT want to work with everyone in the island, the education department, the teachers, parents, and community members to address these challenges. There are monies that are coming in, as you know, billions of dollars. We have to appoint a third party to make sure that money comes in from the First CARE Act. And the governor has not appointed that yet, and we're working with that to make sure that happens. But what I want to really show you is the heart and soul of Puerto Rico, the heart and soul of the workers, the heart and soul of the teachers. So we're going to see a video about a teacher, an NPR member, a union member, whose dedication to her students and their family and her creativity as an educator truly had no limit. She didn't wait. She did what she had to do with the union. She created the Solidarity Library, a school without walls, and a community farm. And it looks as though she's just getting started, because she doesn't stop creating ideas. So please help me to welcome Leslie Otasola. And we're going to show a quick presentation about her. So thank you. Listen, it might be glim, but the sun will come out. And with the union, AFL-CIO, LACLA, AFT, all of us together, we can make this happen and make sure that the Puerto Ricans will rise again. Thank you.
Okay.
Bienvenidos a Puerto Rico. Bienvenidos a Puerto Rico. My name is Leslie Otolaza Matos. I'm 42 years old and I'm an English teacher for an elementary school here in Lajas in the Southwest. Puerto Rico has been suffering lately from a lot of natural disasters. We recently started with Irma. Right after that, Maria hit the island, and still we have people that are suffering. No roofs on their homes, no water or electricity, and it's been really hard. In December of 2019, we started feeling earthquakes as well. And homes went down, schools went down, literally collapsed. The children did not have a safe place to be able to learn. So where I work with at Escuela Elemental Urbana Nueva, in this elementary school, we have also the Montessori program. These assistants were able to gather themselves together and impact the refuge there, bringing some kind of teaching and activities to the children there that had no homes at the time. My colleague and I heard about it. We went there to take our children. I had 3 of my own, so they would be able to have some kind of routine during the day. They loved it, but my teenagers and other teenagers that went there taking their siblings while mom and dad worked were not impacted at all. So we saw that, and we saw the urge to unite our community. We gathered all of them. We went to a nearby park in Lajas, a children's park, and they even decided the days and the times they wanted to come together. We were able to lift a school without walls, as we call it, or Biblioteca Solidaria. And these kids were able to learn so much because the community came together, professionals came over, they volunteered to give them their knowledge. They even learned how to cook a simple cake without an electrical oven in the ground. They learned so much from professionals of the University of Puerto Rico, from different campuses. Students, master degree students came over as well to teach them. And from there, then COVID came over. We have to stay in our homes, and because of that, the kids or the teenagers start to tell us that they needed to see themselves. So we started a virtual webinars for them as well with other professionals. All of a sudden, we have the partnership of a wonderful woman called Marangeli Torres Mercado. She's from Lajas as well, and she said, I know a place we can go. So we started to visit a community farm up in Cabo Rojo, which is called Asociación Llanos Tunas. There, the kids were able to practice protocol using their masks and washing their hands, keeping the distance, and working the earth. They learned the necessity they had to feed their families. And now, it's been pretty strict in Puerto Rico with their lockdowns because of COVID-19. So we had to once again leave the place. But now we're trying and we're doing our best to rescue a school that was closed from all of those 300 and something schools in Puerto Rico that were closed a couple of years ago. And the kids are so excited. We're going in. There's volunteers from the community as well. They're going out there and cleaning these spaces so we can be able to have this community farm in our own community in Lajas. And we're so proud of them, but we really want to thank everybody that has come up together to be able to make this possible. I want to thank again to Ms. Carla González Cobos, Jennifer Saiz, and Marangeli Torres Mercado, with all the other professionals that are able to give their knowledge to all of our teenagers and to keep this running and going. Right now we have online classes, and soon we'll be back in an open space that they will work on a community farm and a lot of other things like programming and engineering and marine biology and other things that we have because of the place we live. We're so grateful for the people that have come together to make this possible. And the things that I've learned throughout this experience, it's that every day the sun shines brighter. Every day it's a new opportunity to help our children learn.
When I was in the island with AFME organizing Chacho, it's an unbelievable story of what the sister Leslie just told us, what could be achieved when there is dedication, when there is passion, when there is a willingness to serve and advance together. Kudos to the sisters from the AFT, y todas las maestras de Puerto Rico. On the topic of unity, though, how do we move forward? I would like to ask Lole, who, aside from being an IAM representative from the Machinists Union, I know Lole for being the president of the United Labor Movement of the Federation of Puerto Rico. And so, Lole, gracias y por estar con nosotros hoy. Lole, can you please tell us what has been the role of the unions in helping our fellow union members and the community as a whole? In that context, why is it crucial for union members and leaders to be able to elevate their voices in events like this that's occurring in Puerto Rico? Lole.
Cómo no, gracias y saludo Edgar y saludo a todos. A nombre de todos los compañeros y compañeras de aquí de Puerto Rico, unionados, agradezco a la presidenta Yadira de LACLA, Yadira Merino, y a todo el equipo de su trabajo por dedicar este town hall a Puerto Rico. Igualmente quiero extenderle nuestro abrazo al presidente de la AFL-CIO, Richard Tronca, a la secretaria tesorera Liz Schuller, que estuvo con nosotros aquí en Puerto Rico durante todo el paso, el apoyo que tuvimos cuando el huracán María, a nuestro Safari Gris, vicepresidente ejecutivo, también por su apoyo. Hoy estamos aquí en el inicio de septiembre, el mes más temido para nuestra población por el aumento de los disturbios atmosféricos causados por el cambio climático. En 18 días exactos, Puerto Rico conmemora 3 años del devastador paso del huracán María y antes el de Irma. 3 años después, la recuperación no está encaminada por culpa de la ineptitud de la administración de Donald Trump, que ha impedido que llegue la mayor parte de las ayudas prometidas y no cesa de insultar a nuestro pueblo. Todavía a esta altura hay 27,000 casas pendientes de reconstrucción, 2,642 de ellas con toldos azules. Se estiman que murieron más de 4,000 personas y hubo una migración que ronda cerca de 500,000 puertorriqueños. No conforme con esos golpes, en enero del 2020 tuvimos y sufrimos los terremotos de la gran intensidad, cuyas secuelas siguen afectando a nuestra población. Se afectaron muchas estructuras y nuestros estudiantes empezaron a perder el año escolar. Poco después llegó el COVID-19. Desde marzo vivimos una cuarentena perenne y un toque de queda que ha limitado nuestros movimientos. Han muerto cerca ya de 500 puertorriqueños y poco más de 34,000 contagios. Desde agosto la cifra de muertes diarias es de entre 6 a 12. 150,000 estudiantes no han tomado clases por la falta de conexión de internet o de un dispositivo. Ante el COVID-19 se ha dejado la fiscalización de las medidas de salud y seguridad en manos de los propios patronos. No tenemos certeza de la cantidad de contagios en los centros de trabajo. La pandemia ha arrasado con lo poco que quedaba de nuestra maltrecha economía. La semana pasada el Departamento del Trabajo informó que la tasa de desempleo en Puerto Rico llegó y ha alcanzado niveles récord del 20%. Casi 750,000 de puertorriqueños han reclamado el desempleo y hay más de 10,000 esperando las ayudas por la ineficiencia gubernamental. La economista Heidi Calero dice que en Puerto Rico se encuentra en una renovada depresión económica. Eso es porque Puerto Rico enfrenta una depresión económica de más de una década. El 3 de mayo del 2017 el gobierno radicó la quiebra al amparo de la ley promesa por una deuda no auditada de más de 70 billones. La irresponsabilidad de muchos gobernantes nos llevó allí. Pero el gobierno de los Estados Unidos y los buitres de Wall Street tienen también mucha culpa. La ley promesa y la Junta de Control Fiscal son un fracaso, un fiasco que nos cuesta millones de dólares al año. Los acuerdos con los bonistas no han sido justos para el pueblo de Puerto Rico. La visión de la Junta con la anuencia de la Casa Blanca de Trump es cuadrar la caja a costa de la salud, la educación y las demás necesidades de los puertorriqueños. Con la próxima reestructuración nos quieren secuestrar las pensiones y seguir reduciendo los servicios a la ciudadanía. Esa receta empezó con la administración del gobernador republicano Luis Fortuño, quien despidió más de 30,000 empleados públicos en el 2009. Y se han aprobado posteriormente leyes laborales que nos han quitado derechos conquistados por décadas de los trabajadores del sector público y privado. El pueblo trabajador no se ha quedado en silencio. Hemos hecho grandes manifestaciones multitudinarias cada 1 de mayo y en el verano del 2019. Los sindicatos tuvimos sobre nuestras espaldas la organización de una marcha en la que más de 500,000 nos tiramos a la calle. Ello con la ayuda de voces importantes de nuestra cultura y los deportes que hicieron suya la convocatoria. Al final, tumbamos literalmente a un gobernador corrupto por medios pacíficos. Eso fue una gran muestra de solidaridad, Nuestro clamor se escuchó y fue celebrado en el mundo entero. Demostramos que, contrario a Trump y sus insultos, Puerto Rico está compuesto por personas decentes que aborrecemos y combatimos la corrupción y la ineficiencia, que creemos en la solidaridad ante todo y que poco a poco buscamos levantarnos de todos los eventos trágicos que nos ha tocado vivir en la última década, pese a Trump y a la ineptitud de FEMA. Esa solidaridad se ha expresado de distintas maneras. Los miembros de nuestras uniones, afiliadas en múltiples ocasiones, hemos salido a auxiliar a nuestros hermanos puertorriqueños desde los huracanes hasta todos los desastres posteriores. En esas misiones fue clave el apoyo que recibimos tanto de la FLCIO como del ACLA y nuestras uniones internacionales. No olvidaremos el 20 de septiembre del 2017, cuando nos azotó María, pero tampoco olvidaremos nunca el 4 de octubre del 2017, cuando aterrizó aquí en Puerto Rico un avión de la United Airlines con suministros y un batallón de 327 sindicalistas provenientes de 17 estados para ir por nuestros campos y ciudades a ayudar a nuestra gente. Agradeceremos también eternamente al ACLA por proponerse celebrar su convención del año 2018 en Puerto Rico, cuando todavía teníamos nuestra infraestructura bien debilitada. Considero que María marcó también a la FLCIO y a nuestras uniones internacionales y locales, a la diáspora puertorriqueña y a otros sectores, porque fue necesario reaccionar a una catástrofe mayor que visibilizó la pobreza económica en Puerto Rico. Con uniones ampliamos las ayudas directas con fondos de desastre a nuestras matrículas y extendimos la asistencia de forma más amplia a las comunidades. Durante los terremotos también pusimos en práctica esa experiencia asistiendo a nuestros pueblos del suroeste de Puerto Rico. En la pandemia, esa solidaridad sigue expresándose de distintas maneras. El liderato de nuestras uniones ha estado vigilante, haciendo valer nuestros derechos para que se proteja la salud de nuestros trabajadores y alzando la voz ante las autoridades. Sin duda ha pasado mucho en Puerto Rico desde la convención del ACLA que se celebró aquí en el 2018. A pesar de Trump, a pesar de FEMA, hemos crecido en experiencia. Aquí estamos de pie, en lucha y en solidaridad. Muchas gracias.
Lola shows how union solidarity can truly make a difference. I witnessed this in Puerto Rico with Lola when we organized from 1999 to 2005, more than 150,000 workers in Puerto Rico helped lift it up. And the fact of the matter is that there are just so many people and communities in the island that are vulnerable, they're neglected, and they're scared. This is the case of this worker named Sandra Pacheco, a 61-year-old woman whose troubles started with Maria, with Hurricane Maria, made landfall on the island in 2017. 3 years later, her troubles are far from over. Sandra is a friend of mine. She is a leader of one of the AFSCME locals, the Department of Transportation and Public Works. And I believe we're about to show a video presentation of Sandra and the plight in Puerto Rico that she's undergoing.
Mi nombre es Sandra Pacheco Santiago, trabajo para el Departamento de Transportación y Obras Públicas de Puerto Rico. La última experiencia que nosotros hemos tenido desde el 2017 con los huracanes de Irma y María, para nosotros ha sido algo bien inusual. En Puerto Rico siempre hemos pasado momentos dificultuosos y nos hemos levantado, pero los eventos consecutivos que hemos tenido desde el 2017 para acá ha sido desastroso. Nosotros con los huracanes Irma y María estuvimos más de un año sin luz eléctrica. Tuvimos que gastar nuestros recursos económicos en comprar planta eléctrica, en buscar gasolina, en poder mantener refrigeradores prendidos para poder mantener fría la insulina, porque mi esposo y yo, los dos somos pacientes diabéticos y necesitábamos pues mantener ese medicamento pues congelado. Con el tiempo pues los vecinos, amistades, la unión, todos pues nos ayudábamos a conseguir pues alimentos, medicamentos y nos ayudaron a poder sobrellevar esta carga que ha sido tan dura. Pero no solo ocurrió eso, también yo vivo en Guánica, donde en diciembre 28 sufrimos el primer movimiento de tierra en Puerto Rico, y entonces allí comenzamos nuevamente otra odisea muy grande con los terremotos en Puerto Rico. Nuestras casas sufrieron graves daños y pues desde allí hemos estado viviendo con mucho temor porque nos puede ocurrir un sismo mayor y que las casas pues se nos vengan abajo, como ha ocurrido con miles de compañeros y residentes de Guánica, Guayanilla, Yauco, Ponce, que sus viviendas se vieron bien seriamente afectadas y muchos perdieron sus hogares. Nosotros día a día pues vivimos con ese gran temor desde el pasado diciembre por los sismos, y hemos estado entonces invirtiendo nuestros pocos recursos que teníamos. El gobierno no nos ha podido ayudar, nosotros no cualificamos para que nos den ayudas gubernamentales, y esto ha sido un grave problema porque ya nos hemos quedado sin recursos económicos para poder seguir sobrellevando esta carga tan grande. Con los sismos, no solamente mi esposo y yo hemos tenido pérdidas, porque teníamos 3 propiedades, de las 3 propiedades, 2 fueron pérdida total, solamente nos queda esta vivienda, y que tiene también daños, grietas, y que hemos tenido que relocalizar lo que es el cuarto, llevárnoslo para la sala convertirla en un cuarto, porque entonces estamos accesibles a la puerta, porque vivimos con el temor de que si ocurre un sismo mayor, pues podamos nosotros salir y podamos estar vivos para que podamos ver a nuestros nietos, a nuestros hijos y estar con ellos.
Bueno, gracias, Sandra. This is the stories that she says is amazing. Is a clear example of what our people are made out of, fighting with grit and perseverance. Sisters and brothers, I pray you all join with me in acknowledging what a great conversation we're having and is needed. We cannot leave it at that. We cannot limit ourselves to only having a discussion on the tribulations that our working sisters and brothers on the island face. We need to act. We have to hold authorities, government accountable, and we have to mobilize so that collectively we can achieve social, economic, racial, ethnic, gender, and civil justice for all Americans. Puerto Rico needs our support. They need the tools to be able to recover. Our responsibility as part of the labor movement is to continue organizing, advocating and advancing the policies that can bring about the opportunities so that this island that has been devastated time and time again. At this moment, when the plight of Puerto Rico is entering the political discussion in the USA, I invite all of you to read this report, to share it, talk about it, make it a part of the conversation, because anything else would be ignoring our duty as labor and most importantly as humans, to do what is right. Bueno, sisters and brothers, as your labor warrior born in El Barrio, USA, muchas gracias y siempre pa'lante.